Welcome to Conversations with Agents of Change, the podcast where we meet the people who are questioning what is, imagining what could be, and taking practical action to create meaningful change. I'm your host, Izzy Boyd, and today we are exploring artificial intelligence not simply as a rapidly developing technology, but as something that is beginning to change how we work, how we create, how organization makes decisions, and perhaps even how communities solve problems together. My guest is Esteban Rocha Rodriguez. Esteban is an AI solution architect, product and technology consultant, and co-founder of Prometheus Consultancy. His experience spans AI strategy, digital transformation, business analysis, energy, product development, and systems architecture. He has worked with organizations including Rapid7, Smartest Energy, and Shell, helping teams navigate complex systems, identify opportunities, and turn emerging technology into something practical and useful. But what makes Esteban's particularly interesting is not simply his technical experience. He believes that good technology should be human, ethical, and bold. He has helped build a growing AI community in Northern Ireland, including co-organizing Belfast's first Claude Code meetup, where hundreds of people expressed an interest in attending and participants were invited not only to listen, but to open their laptops, experiment, and build together. He is also working with other members of the international cloud community to explore how digital innovation and community-led support could be developed in Venezuela. His work raises some important questions. How do we make artificial intelligence accessible beyond the usual group of technical experts? How do we ensure that it creates real value rather than simply more noise? What happens when people stop thinking of themselves as consumers of technology and begin to see themselves as builders? And how do we create futures that are not only intelligent, but generally worth living in? So, Esteban, welcome to Conversations with Agent of Change.
Thank you for having me here.
Esteban, before we talk about AI systems and digital transformation, I would like to begin with you. What experiences shaped the way you see the world, and how did you first become interested in technology as a way of solving problems?
Good question. I would say I didn't have a normal approach. I didn't go straight to university or pursue a technology career. In fact, my story starts in Spain around 2007. I was young and I was interested in more action, let's say. So what I did is join the Spanish army in that time.
Okay, as you do.
Yeah. It was very, very cool. It was hard at the same time, but then I realized that there was a path for skilling myself there. So I joined the academy or the NCO, non-commissioned officers, and I studied, the translation would be telecommunication systems with the focus on satellites, because that's where I was kind of aligned to kind of the branch of signals. That's where it sparked my curiosity in technology, learning for the missions, the communications, how to create a relay that communicate with platoons and the command center and HQ and so on. That was very interesting, and for a few years I was in that world. But obviously there was a limit there, right? So it was only applicable within the military world, and there was no kind of thinking outside, let's say, that bubble. Obviously, personal things happened. I met my wife and started to have children, and then I just decided to move to outside that world to explore where was more there. And that's where I became more knowledgeable around implementations in different fields, helping companies to achieve X, Y, Z. And that's how I became, let's say, that technology consultant.
No, that sounds really cool. It's just so interesting how life takes you around different places, right?
Absolutely.
I've noticed that your career has moved across business analysis, product ownership, energy, digital services, and system architecture, and now AI. So when you look back, what is the common thread connecting those different roles?
I would say it's my ADHD. I wouldn't say I'm going to jump immediately to any cliff, but definitely it's my curiosity.
Yeah.
I don't get stuck in one bubble there. So for the analysis part, I love doing analysis and understand more about the A to B processes and so on. But then when that was so mastered, let's say, I moved to a more challenging role, which was kind of the product management, and then obviously architectural as well. And now with AI, we can see the explosion of innovation that it brings. So I keep saying this, we experiencing the Cambrian explosion of applications, innovations, new workflows, new ways to do things that if I compare to 10 years before, it completely has reshaped how we innovate, how we build new solutions.
Absolutely. And I agree with that so much because you have learned so much moving between sectors and you bring that expertise to the new sector. Would you see yourself more as a technologist, a strategist, or something else?
The needle always kind of moves around. I would say on the strategy part, I love to think what do we need to do to achieve that ultimate goal. But at the same time, when it's required, I will go into the daily operations. I think that's my military mindset.
Yeah.
The day-to-day, okay, we need to complete this. We need to get it done. We need to complete this and so on.
That's really, really good skill to have because you can see the full picture and at the same time diving into the proper action, which I think is amazing. And something that comes through very clearly in your work is that you're not just interested in technology for its own sake. You focus on the relationship between technology, people, processes, and business models. That ability to see the whole system feels increasingly important, particularly when organizations are being encouraged to adopt AI quickly, but sometimes before they have actually fully understood the problem that they're trying to solve. So my question here is, artificial intelligence is currently surrounded by enormous excitement, investment, and expectation, but there's also a lot of confusion. So when an organization tells you, we need to do something with AI, what is the first question you want them to answer?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit difficult to take the technical mindset with, let's say, the strategies mindset here. And that's what I was saying around the operations versus strategy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, let's say, stakeholders or leaders that just say AI is the new thing. We just need to get something in AI. And they will try to kind of update their systems only with the use of AI. And clearly, not always it needs the AI to do X, Y, Z, right? So I think that having kind of that line draw is at the moment a little bit difficult for leaders, or at least for people that perhaps doesn't have that knowledge of what can it do, or what systems we can do at the moment that perhaps it completes that goal. So my first question, apart from what are you trying to achieve, is what is the intelligence that you want to bring?
I love that because I think that is the core. Artificial intelligence is not intelligent itself. So we need to define the purpose of it, of what do we want AI to do, what for, and how. And that's up to us to define it. So I think that's very interesting to define meaningful AI opportunities and avoid that expensive distraction just to do it just for the sake of it. And I think most stakeholders should ask themselves that question. So I believe that your work is turning very complex challenges into actionable strategies. Could you take us through what that actually looks like in practice?
Okay, I really can bring this on paper. Is kind of the methodologic setup that I have when I talk to clients for these scenarios. Like I say, is the initial conversations is understanding what are the intelligence they want to bring, what is they want to not remove, but give it to the AI to process that the humans used to do. That's one of the first pillars that for any AI implementation. Of course, then it comes a series of stages where we define the operational KPIs or any other architectural elements. It could be connecting data, creating those loops, creating those workflows, and understanding the output. Once we have the output, then the next immediate step is evaluating those. So we have a baseline, and we can see what areas could be improved or what areas should be tweaked in order to have the optimal output that we expect.
Exactly.
So again, if we take a horizontal line, is always thinking about, yes, the strategy, the operational elements that we want to bring, the AI systems, the constraints with the data. This is something very important, is that when we input anything to these APIs, this AI, they're going to a data center. And we truly don't know if these companies are going to use this to retrain their models. And that is something that we need to be very careful about.
Yeah.
We could be handling our entire data to these companies, not only Anthropic or OpenAI, but the other ones. And again, they can use this to develop their own products that will sell us to us.
Absolutely, yes. So that is the ultimate barrier of a business intelligence, right? So it's like we are purposely giving away our most internal knowledge. So can AI make bad processes even worse by allowing it to happen faster? What I mean is, like, sometimes we have a bad process and it's going to kind of crash faster because we are just making it faster. So what would be your take on that?
Definitely, and I seeing this happening. Perhaps there is a process that is optimal, or takes a longer time, or it creates a frustration for the client. And again, just by simply plugging in AI, we expect them to do the magic, but reality is something very different. So it can make processes worse without a doubt, without the proper controls, governance, and limitations. It could, for example, bring data that is not even relevant to the customer. It could be very costly. It could run on the background for hours of ages, and then you have a bill of £50,000 that you don't expect. I think we have seen in the past, for example, OpenAI or any other chat, that they were giving advice or recommendations, or this sounds like a joke, but how to rob a bank, or how to die better, or even to the extreme of damage, or I don't want to say that word because it's so bad, but damage oneself, right? So I think a free chat like this, of general purpose, that its intention is to create an output based on your input, has to be seriously constrained.
Yes, absolutely. I agree completely with that. And how do you identify the small interventions that can actually create significant effect?
Well, technically speaking, there is now different guardrails, tools, techniques, and so on. First of all, we can set up these kind of deterministic elements when we asked the AI to process certain information and expect an output. So by that, I mean limiting to just answer to the appropriate questions, or just to kind of interpret first, verify, and then evaluate before giving an output. Nowadays, it's starting to become more a norm in terms of how are we, let's say, not encapsulate, but at least
Limit somehow.
limit. I think this is the right word. How to limit the output of these AI systems to give us the information that we need, instead of, again, being so open.
Yeah. I love that. So the distinction between capability and the usefulness, I think, is crucial. A system can be impressive and still fail in make anyone's life better. So I think there's a lot of software out there that are impressive and they just have lots of different things. But actually, they might not have a real practical impact in people's lives. And perhaps one of the responsibilities of people working in this space is to keep asking not only can we build this, but also who is this for? And what does it improve, and what might it unintentionally change? I think those are the most radical questions in these AI generations. So I would like to jump to something that I think is very well connected. Who do you think should be involved in defining the need? Is that just the technical expertise, or is that the final stakeholder? Who should be involved in deciding what we need?
I don't want to get too caught up in the corporate world, knowing that the pillars of business analysis, or a developer, or even an admin or a stakeholder, have somehow fallen. Now, one person can be those different roles because it now has that power through AI, right? With the right configuration, the right inputs, and so on. For example, Windsurf or Cursor or even Lovable. Those companies were a handful of team players.
Yeah.
And now their companies valued by the billions or at least the millions. That tells you that we don't need a lot of roles anymore in order to create. But again, back to your question, who should be able to define those ones? I think everyone with a good idea and a good intent is good enough. Obviously, partnering with someone technical, of course, but anyone with a good idea is able to produce an impactful system, without a doubt. I've seen it, and I collaborated with other builders in these specific elements. Might not be hugely technical, but I have a good intention. I know what I need to create, and therefore I can partner with someone that will help me to shape it, and I will have exact system that will help me achieve what I needed.
Yes, absolutely. I want to talk about the Belfast Claude Code meetup. One of the examples that you highlighted was someone with no traditional technical background using the technology because he thought in outcomes rather in code. Why was this so significant?
I think for this particular individual, he even kind of show in front of the 100 people that we have in the session. He didn't have a coding background. He didn't have technical acumen. He just have an intention.
Yeah.
And again, he spent good hours building, iterating, getting to know the systems and the workflows. And then what he created was, for his business, of course, but what he created was an application that managed his hospitality business. And again, for him, this was truly mind-blowing that he was able to create the system that is needed, the workflow that they were needed to operate in his small business.
Yeah.
He was saying that not even 3 years ago, he will have a quote of 10, 20 grand for a system to do more or less the exact same. So for this individual, his name was John. I think that was mind-blowing to show that as a not technical background, I was able to create my own operational business using Claude Code.
That sounds so exciting. So I would like you to tell us a bit more about that Claude Code meetup. So where did they start? Tell us all about it.
Fantastic. Yes, I'm very excited. So once again, I coordinated the first ever Claude Code meetup here in Northern Ireland, and we hosted in Ormu Labs. So we have over 500 applications, and sadly, we can only receive 100. So all started in London, I have to say. I was one of the few that got an invitation for a Claude Code event in London. It was only organized globally in 3 cities, San Francisco, London, and Tokyo. I was very excited. I even had to take the day off when I received this. And I flew very early that day on a Wednesday and flew the same day back. So it was a day full of sessions, how to use Claude Codes, example from other people, best practices, and so on. And as a side note, I got the chance to meet with the Claude Code creator, Boris Cherny, and I only have words of appreciation for creating such a fantastic product and something that is definitely has revolutionized everyone's day-to-day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in these events, you meet with people, you have a lunch or a coffee with someone. And I got to know Kevin Collins, who is a Claude ambassador for Dublin. Yeah. And we were talking because obviously we were both from Ireland, or at least living in Ireland. And so we were talking, and he introduced me to Jason Bigman, who is the head of our community and Anthropic. So we were just talking about how you guys are organizing events, or how can I bring this to Northern Ireland. And then I talked to Art, who is also a developer here in Northern Ireland. And the three of us, we organized this, and we talked to Ormu Labs, and they were delighted
Yeah.
to have us there. And
Great.
of course, and then the magic happens.
So 500 people expressed an interest in the Belfast First Claude Code meetup. Were you surprised by the response at the Belfast First Claude Code meetup?
We were really surprised. We knew the demand was high, but we did not expect over 500 people trying to get a seat. And not only was tech enthusiasts, but were just normal people that
Different backgrounds. And
different backgrounds, without a doubt. And it was truly inspiring to see that a simple post, hey, I'm organizing Claude Code, who wants to come in, turn into that magnificent event.
I love that. I'm very curious about the questions at that event from the audience. Reveal anything about how do you think people currently feel about AI?
I think the question were really related to the topics that we showed were what we did with Claude Code. Or there was one gentleman, he showed his live operating system. I found it astounding. I mean, it was like Jarvis from Iron Man.
Wow, okay.
Really day to day with him, be able to bring information. He even kind of say, I just typed this half hour ago. Tell me a little bit about Esteban. Tell me a little bit about the people who are joining us. And this kind of Jarvis, let's say, will bring this information, accurate, small snippets, and it keeps the day-to-day, these agents in helping him to manage his day-to-day. As he put it, humans are really good at not remembering things.
Absolutely. With my hands up, I'm not very good at that. So I believe that event didn't end with the presentations. People opened their laptops and began building a card game, a flight simulator, a rescue dog platform, a star constellation. Why was the workshop element so important?
I believe this is the icing on the cake. I believe it's saying in English is giving the capability to the people to build something that they need or they want or explore with imagination. Again, the barriers or to build something have completely collapsed. So I have to thank very much Kevin to running this workshop with us that day. He was just showing the best practices or how to run a Claude Code to achieve a goal or create something. Once that capability was handled to every one of us there, we knew how to do it. It was the best way I can describe it was like Prometheus, the titan of foresight. He handled the fire to the humans. He didn't teach humans what to do the fire, right? But he handled the fire and the humans create civilizations out of it. In a way, it was something like this. Now that you know what can you do with Claude Code in this instance, people were just having the imagination exploding and having these applications or creating these systems or creating these solutions or even games as we saw. It was truly magnificent to see people getting together and debating or start to explore how they will achieve or what they would like to do using this technology.
I love that because it sounds like that was a lot of learning through experimentation, like hands-on, and I think that's the best way to learn something. So when's the next one happening? What do we need to do to make it another happen?
Oh, that's a good question. Sadly, Kevin is super busy, and he obviously needs to attend his own a city in Dublin. He's organizing their events and so on. I'm asking Anthropic to review my submission as a Claude ambassador, and hopefully I can fingers crossed, toes and fingers. I can get their blessing, let's say, so I can run these events monthly.
Well, we have to keep an eye on and see how that goes because I think that would be really exciting to see more happening in Northern Ireland. I think there's a lot of talent out there. And as you said, not necessarily technically background, but there's a lot of innovation. And I mean, Belfast and Northern Ireland itself has a history on innovation and creation. And I think that is a very good place to start to have all these platforms and spaces for these bright minds. So I love that. And speaking of that, so For somebody listening who does not consider themselves very technical, what does it mean to begin building with AI? What should their first step should be?
I would say take the samples of my daughters. They are 16 and 11. And obviously, as they are growing, they're starting to get more digital fluency, let's say, in the day-to-day. Especially my teenager, definitely she's on the phone and she's interacting perhaps more with technology. On one hand, as parents, we need to be, mindful about how they consume technology. But if we want them to learn about this, we have to increase the AI fluency. And that's something that I don't think is happening at the moment is in schools.
Yeah.
Sadly, they are teach how to do things, even in math, where the machine can do that, all of that for free.
Yeah.
I'm afraid. So, but they don't teaching them how to work with these machines or work with AI. So I sit with them and I explain to them the same way I would do with anyone new into AI. The goal for me is for them to reach an AI fluency and literacy that they can distinguish between the AI slop or the real content and the human content, of course, and what sustainable they can get from AI, not just type in and consume tokens, which of course is going to be a big deal for someone.
Exactly. And I think that's very important. And I remember when we were at Stage the Change and we were talking about the hidden cost. And it was very relevant to mention that now and at the time as well, that not because we don't see it, it doesn't mean it's not costing anyone. So there is a cost. So would you like to tell us a bit more about the tokens?
Absolutely. This is a theme growth, even kind of different papers, and I have even a site that shows you the token cost of your inputs when you use AI. So basically, tokens are the currency of AI. Anything that you put in the chat, it could be words, it could be a PDF, it could be anything, is converted into tokens because that's how the machine reads it. And of course, the companies are starting to charge the costs of tokens. For Opus, I believe for a million tokens is $3 in and $5 out, meaning that whatever amount of tokens you put in, you need to multiply per 3, and the output you need to multiply per 5. I could check that, but this is kind of the general rule, of course. So obviously that tokens is processed by a data center and it has a computational cost. So the more we use, the more computation we need. And again, I need to highlight things that are very common at the moment is that the world is not short on oil, but the world is short on tokens because we don't have enough data centers out there to process the increasing demand of AI. So that is the cost that we are seeing. And sadly, I have to say that without tackling those challenges, we're just deferring the real cost. We're not really innovating. We're just putting the cost somewhere else. And sadly, is in our environment.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that is something that we discussed at that one of the other episodes. So I will put the link here. So for the listeners who want to listen to that other conversation. But yes, the hidden cost of AI in terms of the environment and how much it costs to cool down the servers and stuff. So I think it's very relevant to think that it's not just the way it costs in terms of electricity, but also in terms of the environment. And you have said that with AI, everything is tokens, and that understanding changes how people build. So could you explain how tokens affect cost and performance and decision choices?
The best way I can describe this is whenever we use our electricity, we get charged per kilowatts per hour.
Yeah.
Or the big ones gets charged per megawatt per hour. So tokens is the same principle.
Yeah.
Every time you run AI or every time you ask something, you are consuming or exposing those tokens. So you are going to get a bill at the end of the month. However, right now, the increased adoption of AI is because these tokens are subsidized by these companies. the model they are sitting on right now is unsustainable. OpenAI is losing around 15 billion per year. What company can sustain that?
Yeah.
Anthropic is barely making any money at the moment, of course. The better they kind of bring new businesses or they optimize the cost per tokens, they will make more money. But at the end, what I expect is that perhaps next year or the year after, we're all going to pay these tokens one way or another. Nothing is for free.
Yeah.
So when it comes to implementing AI solutions, for example, it's all about how much is going to cost us as tokens, right? So again, the website that I created, it helps you to see and evaluate the workflows to see how much token cost will have. For example, a simple workflow that is a recurring for processing, let's say a customer portal example. Perhaps there is an AI bot that helps you to understand what is your products or what happened with your product and so on.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, every time you run this, will have a token cost, let's say $1 per operation. That is expensive, but just to make sure that people understand this. Well, multiply that per how many interactions you have per day or per month. If you have 600 recurring tasks, is 600 pounds, let's say, right? So that is the economic principle that any implementation should have is what is your token cost to run what you want to do.
It makes so much sense now because it is very important to understand those mechanisms rather than treating it as if it's magic. So it is very interesting. And there's something very empowering about this meatifying technology. So when we understand that it's a system with capabilities and limits and costs and consequences, we can begin to make a more deliberate choices about how it should be used. The other day, I was reading that you wrote that you had the opportunity both to share what you knew and to listen to people who knew things that you did not. And that both matter equally. And I love that because it makes me think, what does that say about your idea of leadership? So what do you believe is leadership and how do you approach that?
To me, is encouragement. Again, tie back to my experience in the army. I had to learn those leadership skills, again, with the mindset that it was on the military environment.
Yeah.
But you still need to encourage people to do that extra mile, extra effort. So to me, leadership is all about encourage and find what the people that you're managing or even within your family, what they love to do and what they can reach with their potential. What is the fire that lights them and you can see them how they can achieve those things that they are envisioning or they have an inner feeling. And from my daughter perspective, I encourage her in her music, and she's very talented in that area. And we saw that in Stenhall.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Amazing.
That was very good.
I put a link on it as well so people can know what we're talking about.
Yes.
You know what? I really like that when you say about leadership because I do believe that a good leader is someone who can identify strong areas of someone and support them to explore and kind of help them embrace their strength and provide opportunities for them to grow them. And that's what shows me about the meetup because it was very clear that it was not about demonstrating a product. It was more like, let's build a community so we all can grow and make things together. And collectively, we can grow this knowledge. And I found that very interesting. Also, it's opening a door for how innovation can grow within Northern Ireland. And it's happening in a very sustainable way because there's no need to have these huge teams or these huge resources because we can have access now to technology to do that. So what would you like the Belfast AI community to become?
Wow, I would love to see a big community. And don't get me wrong, I mean, already exists pockets of community, perhaps not under a single umbrella, but definitely Belfast has an incredible talent. And perhaps it's not seen as much as cities like Barcelona or London or other ones, but with the teams I work with, even kind of spoke with universities, there is a good talent here, without a doubt. Perhaps what I would love to see in the community is be able to show more those solutions that people are building, or from an educational standpoint is how we are educating the young ones to have a better AI fluency and have a better skills to discern between AI flops and real content, and at the end of the day is how we can make use of this technology that will support our communities.
Absolutely. And when you talk about that point, I was very curious about when you said that technology should be human, ethical, and both. And I love that. So my question would be like, what does it take for technology to be human?
Well, a machine is a machine. I cannot expect any model to act as a human, even though it's easy for us to interact in chat and have some kind of degree of empathy and so on. Behind the scenes, it's all math and algorithms, and that's it. I do believe that when it comes more human is through the regulations and the practices that we use them. Education is such a critical point here, but we're very lucky to be here in the EU where the regulation is the norm, the day-to-day. And I would say through regulations, we can limit the bad use of AI. To me, working with the experts, putting those limitations is essential for a more ethical use of this technology.
Absolutely. And when you talk about ethics, I think it's very important to touch on the fact that it's not just about the ethics of the technology, but it's about the ethics of the process and the design process from the beginning. So who do you think should be accountable when an AI system causes harm?
I think people have brought this question time to time. And I think the answer, it's not like it changed, but definitely the context it has been shifted. Is it the builder, or is it the designer, or is it the guy who had the user?
Or is it all of us?
I think all of us should be held accountable for implementations that doesn't have that ethical angle.
Absolutely. And I think that is getting back again to AI literacy and how important it is that we understand the responsibilities we have as users, as builders, as designers, and as consumers. So boldness can move me very quickly, or it can also mean being willing to change the direction of travel. So is it bold to adopt AI early, or can it also be bold to pause it?
Just like a big dilemma that is happening at the moment. I do believe that, for example, Dario Amodei and Demis Hassabis in the Davos Economic Forum, they both expressed that from one side they will be happy to pause the increasingly acceleration of innovation through AI because we don't still have those really defined guardrails. And at the same time, if you think about competition, if you put yourself that break, you're letting others to accelerate further than you, right? I'm dividing this, to be honest, because I love to see innovation as long as it's not, harmful for the environment, humans, and our society. But at the same time, I do believe that either through education again or regulations through the EU or governments, those norms has to be applied for limiting or control the damage that it could cause.
Absolutely. Because this conversation around AI, it's always very polarized. And on one side, there is the promise that it will solve pretty much everything. On the other hand, there's fear that it will replace people and it will undermine trust or concentrate power. And I understand that. But perhaps the more useful question here is not if AI is good or bad, but how are we using it? And is how we choose to build and who needs to shape that. And as you said, the regulations around that and whether ordinary people are able to participate in the decision making of how the future will look like. So what do you think organizations must misunderstand about the effect AI will have on their work?
The true cost of it and the governance. Without companies that don't have a good policy or have not implemented a policy because they just think that AI is just a new tool, they're definitely gonna see not only a high cost, but also it could be negatively impacted by not having those controls elements on how to utilize the workflows we need to do and so on. I think for the companies or the leaders that are thinking to use AI, they need to have a body, a council, let's say, that is able to shape how we use AI ethically or productive, of course, or all costs mindful, so we don't burn those tokens by just simply asking questions that perhaps is simply just to use Google, right?
Can you tell me an examples of how people are using AI for their own good in terms of something that has been done? I know you're Venezuelan, and recently with the earthquake in Venezuela, have you personally seen something that is quite notable?
Yes, without a doubt. And sadly, on the 24th of June, my hometown, La Guaira, was severely impacted by this devastating earthquake. Look, to be honest, it is as ridiculously as it sounds. Like 80% of the buildings were either damaged or collapsed. So Venezuelan people just got outside and inside Venezuela, and the international community just immediately started to put their hands and then help somehow. And I remember that night I couldn't. I went to bed. First of all, I was trying to get my family. And when I found them, I realized that millions of people were in the same situation. So I could see that, again, with the right tools, was easy to spin a website that could connect the missing people with their families, or create a database that will it be easy to at least track the last known position and so on. And this is just one case, right? So people were starting to create applications to identify the damage that the buildings are there, or the hospitals, what do they need at the moment, or the refugee camps and who was there, especially the children who sadly many of them became orphaned. So as you can see, the speed of developing something has completely accelerated, and the cost has been reduced, and now we are able to provide the tools that are needed there. That's one of the examples I've seen where a catastrophe like this has challenged people outside or inside Venezuela to build something. Another case that I would like to highlight, for example, outside Venezuela, was a tragic event that happened here in Ireland. Kevin developed this system. I thought it was beautiful in the mission. It was in one hackathon, he became number 6 globally for this solution. And it was an intelligent drone system that could scan areas, the coast side of Ireland, for finding missing people that perhaps were dragged through a current and so on. Again, beautiful mission, and I believe he open sourced this, and he's working with the government of Ireland to implement this for rescue teams in the island. Again, seeing the ability we can construct in speed when we need it. We just need to have that good intention.
Exactly. I think that intentionality behind the developing of products and services, it's crucial, especially nowadays. And considering the impact that those products or services can have, it is what we should be focusing on. I think that meaningful change is often created when people have access to tools and knowledge. When you heard for the first time that Agents of Change was contacting you, what did you think about that?
I was curious because I haven't heard of you guys before. So I was truly investigating. This is a beautiful mission to connect and see what are the impactful changes that individuals, organizations, communities are doing across local communities or countries and so on. So I would like to think I'm also an agent of change somehow.
Definitely are. You got a bad thread.
So yes, I love to think that I'm somehow contributing to this change, if it's through the work I do or through the educational angle, or supporting not only my loved ones or my friends, but also the community in anything I can be a service at, which is again my innate trait is how can I help others.
And what responsibility comes from enabling or influencing how the technology is adopted? Because I know you have mentioned that you feel you have this responsibility, but how that affects what we're teaching others or how we're helping others?
Very philosophical question here.
Would that make you change the way you interact professionally, or would that change the way you approach certain projects?
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, when I put my mind into, okay, I'm going to have this engagement, I'm going to work with this client or any other thing, obviously I need to think about, am I doing something good, or am I just building something for the sake of money without a real positive impact? And I think it's easy to get absorbed by the economic value return and not only to think about the impact that this solution might have in the society. So the responsibility that I come in when I'm dealing with this scenario is, am I doing something that is truly benefiting the environment or the society or a mission, instead of just kind of making a product better because it's going to drive more economic revenue.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the hardest part, trying to do something without losing focus of the cost or why it matters. So what would you like to be different 5 years from now because of the work that you're doing today?
I would definitely love to partner with educators, as I believe the future generations, they need to have a better understanding of how to utilize these technologies. I don't think, from my point of view, we're going to make a stop. I don't think that's happening at all. But what is truly important is how we are educating the young ones and how we are preparing the future generations in dealing with these new challenges that we are setting ourselves. Not only in the environmental cost of data centers and so on, but also is how we deal with this increasingly bombardment, let's say, of AI generation outputs. So I think that is one of the areas I would love to be part of with regulators, panels that helps to bring the AI literacy to the schools or the people that we work with, or anyone that is interacting.
Absolutely. What change would you like the people listening to begin making after this conversation?
Definitely invest yourself a little bit in understanding AI. It's not just about chatting with ChatGPT or the other ones. It is also about understanding the costs associated with it, how the system works, just for an overview of it. I think people will get more benefit from just spending a little bit of time into understanding how these systems work. So A, you don't have an expensive bill at the end of the month, and B, you are able to discern better into what is real and what is not.
Absolutely. I am so aligned with that answer. So, Esteban, thank you so much. What I take from today's conversation is that the future of our artificial intelligence will not be determined by the technology alone. I think we all are responsible for what we're doing. It will be shaped by the questions we ask and the problems we choose to solve, the communities we include, and the values that we refuse to leave behind. Your work has reminded me that agent of change is not simply someone who understands what's coming next. It's not about just the technology, but it's someone who helps other people to participate in creating it. And by translating complex technology into practical action, building spaces where people can experiment together, and connecting innovation with ethics, empathy, and community resilience. Esteban, you have been helping to move AI from an abstract possibility into a human capability. Thank you for joining me at Conversations with Agents of Change, and to everyone listening, thank you for being part of the conversation. Remember, change does not only belong to governments, institutions, or technology companies. It begins whenever someone sees that things could be different and chooses to act. I'm Izzy Boyd, and this has been Conversations with Agents of Change. Until next time.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by the Change Impact Group.